Star Trek The Next Generation, Starfleet Academy, Crossfire, Chapter 5. As Jack 2 had promised, the Starfleet Academy band was one of 3 finalists invited to return the next night. But before that concert, there were 22 hours of daylight in which to have fun, and Geordi and Will decided to make the most of it. After breakfast, Geordi took Will in search of a force field roller coaster. They finally found one at the end of a shiny metal pier. It didn't look like much, just a line of small, colorful boats parked in the water. A sign said they'd be open in 5 minutes.
"All right!"
exclaimed Geordi.
"We'll be the first ones on."
Will looked at him puzzledly. "On what? They're just little boats."
"That's what they look like," said Geordi. "But there's more to it than that. You'll see."
Will grinned. "Scary, huh?"
"It will curl your hair."
"How many cadets know about this?" Geordi shrugged.
"I think I'm the only one in the band who's ever been to Pacifica before. Want to try it?"
"Wait a minute." Will tapped his communicator badge. "Riker to Akusta."
"Hello, Will," said
the Deltan female.
"What are you doing today?"
Will gave his friend a wink. "Geordi and I are about to take a boat ride. Want to come along?"
"Sure."
"Better hurry. There's a silver pier at the end of the strand. Do you know where that is?"
"Sure, I can see it from here."
"Then hurry. Riker out."
Geordi looked at him and shook his head. "You sure hold a grudge, don't you?"
"They started it," said Riker. "Once I get even with Akusta, I can quit the band with a clear conscience."
Geordi frowned. "Are you still thinking about quitting the band? Why?"
"They're never going to give me a break here. They would rather have Lachelle, even though he's gone."
"Give them a chance," said Geordi. "They're just getting to know you. Being in the band is not about playing music, it's about teamwork. That's what everything in the academy is about."
"Then why do they pick on me?" muttered Will. He looked off into the distance. "Here she comes. Don't say anything."
Geordi shrugged. "I never say anything."
He turned to see the tall Deltan striding toward them. She was wearing her bathing suit, which was good, Geordi thought, because she was going to get wet. At least the roller coaster was not going to curl Akusta's hair, because she didn't have any. Will waved to her. "Hurry up!" When Akusta reached them, she looked doubtfully at the little boats.
"This looks boring."
"Oh, it will be fun," insisted Will. "Come on." As they walked out on the pier, a flock of colorful birds flew overhead. A dozen flying fish leapt out of the water, and the birds turned in formation to chase them.
"Pacifica is a beautiful place,"
thought Geordi, and he would be sad to leave after the concert. At the end of the pier, a Tiberian with huge ears was polishing one of the boats. "Are you open yet?" asked Riker. The Tiberian checked his timepiece.
"Yes, I sure am."
"How much does it cost?" asked Akusta.
"Your money is not good here," answered the man. "I saw your band perform last night. You were wonderful."
The 3 of them grinned.
"Thank you,"
answered Akusta. "We'll be performing again tonight."
"I wouldn't miss it," said the man. "Do you know what to expect from this ride?"
"Sure we do," Will answered quickly. "Can we all fit into one boat?" The proprietor pointed to the first boat in line, a sleek red craft.
"Hop in."
Will smiled at Akusta. "You sit in front." They all squeezed into the tiny boat, with Akusta and Will in front, followed by Geordi. Geordi had an attack of guilt, and he almost warned the Deltan that they were going on a wild ride. But when Akusta and Stinson were out to get Will, he hadn't warned him. It was only fair to keep quiet now. The Tiberian gave them a sly grin.
"Have fun."
He picked up a small control panel. Akusta still looked bored. "I hope this doesn't take too long."
"Don't worry about that," said Geordi. "It'll be over quickly."
A second later, they took off like a shot, rising straight into the air on invisible force fields. Akusta started screaming in terror, and she never stopped for the whole crazy ride. When they got about 30 meters into the air, the tiny craft plummeted back toward the water. Now all three of them were yelling. Akusta covered her eyes as they leveled out and streaked across the water, shooting a stream of water high into the air. Then they shot into the air again and swerved around on an invisible track. All three of them were thrown to one side of the boat, and Akusta wailed in fear. "Stop this thing! Stop it!" But it was too late for that. They barely had time to catch a breath as the craft plunged again toward the waves. This time the boat sunk deeper into the water, and the spray drenched the three riders. Akusta huddled with fear and screamed, "We're out of control!" Riker roared with laughter. "Fun, isn't it?" The Deltan looked at him as if he were crazy. The craft jumped out of the water and bounced up and down rapidly many times as it flew across the water. Geordi felt as if he had left his stomach back on the pier. All three of them were pale and soaking wet by the time the craft spun around and bounced to a stop at the pier. The Tiberian was grinning at them. "Want to go again?" he asked. "No!" shouted Akusta. She tried to stand up, but was too dizzy. She nearly fell out of the boat, and Will had to catch her. "You weren't bored, were you?" he asked. Her dark eyes tore into him. "I never want to see you again either." Somehow she crawled out of the craft and staggered down the pier. Will gave Geordi a satisfied smile. "What is it that the Klingons say? Revenge is a dish best served cold?" "Cold and wet," added Geordi, shaking the water out of his visor. Okay. That night at the performance, Akusta's eyes were still shooting daggers at Will. Geordi feared that she and Stinson would try to get their own revenge, but he doubted they would try tonight. The band had a chance to go home winners, and nobody was going to mess that up. There was another reason to be serious. The Starfleet Academy band was playing last, and they had already heard the other two groups who were finalists. They were really good. The Moroccan Youth Symphony played amazing arrangements with syncopated rhythms. Maybe their music didn't have the same melodies of Earth jazz, but the Moroccans were fine musicians. In their culture, almost everyone played an instrument, and these players were the best of the best. The other group was from Deltara University on Alpha Centauri 7. A very practical people, the Centaurians played instruments made from household objects. Geordi watched in awe as they coaxed music from vacuum cleaners, inner tubes, pots and pans. It had been easier the night before when the Academy Band had been one of the first groups to perform. Nobody had known what to expect. Now with everyone watching, they played well, but not as well as the night before. They were nervous, and it showed. Maybe, thought Geordi, they would be more relaxed if they had someone rip his pants every night, as Stinson had done. Even Geordi was nervous. During Take the A Train, he missed sounding the train whistle by half a beat. On Stardust, Bert Hostine played the solo on a saxophone, and he simply wasn't as good as Stinson and some of the other soloists. The Starfleet Academy Band finished second to the Moroccans, but nobody complained. The Moroccans had clearly deserved to win. Captain Webb was very gracious when he accepted the award for second place. He got a lot of applause when he promised the audience that the Starfleet Academy Band would be back next year. Geordi was seated at the rear of the concert hall, and he was surprised when Jacques Two sat down beside him. "This is a travesty," said the Orion. "I put you in first place, but the other judges overruled me." "We weren't as good as last night," Geordi said sadly. "It happens." The Orion's green face wrinkled into a frown. "It happened because your director allowed you too much time for amusement. If you had rehearsed all day, you would have been better. I am a strong believer in discipline." "Well," said Geordi, "we're only students. If we don't have any fun,
What's the point in coming here? The Orion narrowed his dark eyes at Geordi. The point is to win. That is always the point. Geordi wasn't going to argue with him. He wasn't sure that he really liked Jack 2 all that much. Are you leaving tonight? Asked the Orion. As soon as this is over, said Geordi. Very well. Jack 2 stood and offered his strong hand to Geordi. We will meet again. I hope so, said Geordi, trying to be polite. At least the Orion was a big fan of theirs, so he couldn't be all bad. The cadet sat back in his seat and watched the end of the awards ceremony. An hour later, the cadets transported back to the Gallant and got their duty assignments. Geordi and Will were both surprised to find that they were assigned to the bridge. They were supposed to report immediately. All right, said Will excitedly. Bridge duty. This is more like it. Yeah, but I want an engineering, grumbled Geordi. Will patted him on the back. The bridge is a place to be. That's where the action is. I don't intend to serve anywhere else. I guess it's better than the mess hall, said Geordi. They reported to the small bridge of the Gallant and found Lieutenant Commander Baxter in command. She motioned them to the auxiliary consoles in the aft command area. Mr. Riker, she said, monitor operations. Mr. LaForge, monitor life support. Don't enter any commands unless I give you a direct order. Yes, sir, said Riker smartly. Commander, we sincerely appreciate this assignment. She gave them a slight smile. You two came through for us in a big way, and you deserve a reward. If there's an emergency, be ready to relieve the command crew, but I don't think we'll have an emergency. Me neither, answered Will confidently. He and Geordi took their stations on the aft consoles and watched Baxter and the regular crew prepare to leave orbit. It was exciting being on the bridge, Geordi had to admit. Maybe he would try for a bridge assignment when he graduated. He'd been doing well in his navigation classes. After running through the pre-departure checklist, Baxter ordered, Helm, take us out of orbit at 1/3 impulse. Yes, sir, came the response. As ordered, Geordi monitored the ship's life support systems. Even though the Gallant was an old training cruiser, she was well maintained. He detected only a few minor power fluctuations when the impulse engines went online. Distance from the planet? Asked Baxter. 20,000 kilometers, answered the operations officer. Baxter nodded. Helm, set course for Earth, maximum warp. Yes, sir, answered the helmsman. Course laid in. Engage, ordered Baxter. Engaging warp, said the ensign. Suddenly the ship was rocked by a powerful concussion, and Geordi was nearly thrown out of his seat. Report, demanded Baxter. The officer on ops stared at his console, and his eyes grew as large as the twin suns of Pacifica. Commander, that was phaser fire. We are under attack. Shields up, red alert, shouted Baxter. The dark-haired woman stalked across the bridge. Communications, advise Starfleet. The ensign on the comm panel shook her head in amazement. Captain, a dampening field is suppressing our communications. Commander, shouted the ensign on the weapons console. Shields aren't responding. They've been disabled by the dampening field and a tractor beam. A tractor beam? The commander stared at the blank view screen overhead. From where? Short-range scanners, report. I have found the source of the tractor beam, said the ops officer. On screen. A large warship filled the main viewer. It was green and black and shaped like a torpedo with fins. The sleek craft bore down on the small cruiser like a shark attacking a sea lion. They're Orion, said Baxter with amazement. Armed photon torpedoes. The ship was jolted again by phaser fire, and the ops console exploded in a flash of sparks and flame. The wounded ensign fell to the floor, and Will dashed to the console and dragged him to safety. Geordi grabbed a fire extinguisher off the bulkhead and sprayed the console until the flames sputtered out. Baxter slapped a panel on the command chair. Sick bay, med team to the bridge. Commander, called the communications officer, I have just received a message from the Orion vessel. Yes, the young officer swallowed hard. They say if we resist, we will be destroyed. Chapter 6. Geordi heard a good lord. Geordi heard a whoosh, and he turned to see the turbolift door open. 3 members of the med team ran onto the bridge and took charge of the wounded ensign. Captain Webb followed them and approached Baxter. "Report," he demanded. Baxter looked grimly at her comrade. "We've been attacked by an Orion warship, and they've locked on with a tractor beam. A dampening field has cut off our communications as well as our shields. If we resist, they say they'll destroy us." Captain Webb stared at the torpedo-like vessel in the view screen. "What on earth could they want with us?" Suddenly the Gallant was jolted again, and everyone staggered to stay on their feet. "Sir, they've locked onto us with a tractor beam," said the helmsman. "We are moving." "Moving where?" demanded Webb. "Hail that vessel." "I'm sorry, sir," said the comm officer. "The dampening field won't allow us to communicate out." "We could defend ourselves," said Baxter, "but I don't think we can slug it out with an Orion warship." Captain Webb looked around at his young crew plus the 2 cadets, Geordi and Will. From his concerned expression, Geordi could almost read his mind. His anger told him to fight back, but his experience told him to wait. The deaths of all the young people aboard the Gallant weren't worth the show of force. The view screen went blank, and the lights dimmed on the bridge. "We've entered warp drive," said the helmsman. "Their tractor beam is holding steady." "Any idea of our destination?" asked Webb. The officer shook his head. "I've plotted a vector of our course, and it's not the Orion homeworld. We're now at warp 2 and increasing speed." Baxter frowned. "This old ship can't go much faster in warp 2 without falling apart." Geordi glanced at Will, and he could see the fear in his friend's eyes. Thus far, only the people on the bridge knew what was happening. As Will had said, the bridge was where the action was. Serving on the bridge also meant that you were the first to know that the ship was in trouble. "Ready photon torpedoes," ordered Webb. "We may have to use them if they try to take us much faster." "Our speed is holding steady at warp 3, said the helmsman with relief. Geordi went back to his station and studied his life support readouts. There were power fluctuations all over the ship, but nothing serious. At least they weren't going to die by being dragged somewhere at warp speed. Will took his place at the auxiliary ops station. With the regular ops station out, he was on duty. He reported, "Tractor beam steady at warp 3.2. "This is crazy," said Captain Webb. "Why would the Orions hijack an old training vessel full of Starfleet cadets?" Geordi snapped his fingers. "Jack 2! "Jack 2? asked Webb. The cadet nodded. "Remember, sir, the Orion judge? He wanted us to play for him on some outpost. He didn't like it when you told him no. He said he would cut through the red tape." The rotund captain nodded. "I remember. It's great to have fans, but this is ridiculous." Webb strode to the captain's chair and tapped the comm panel. "This is Captain Webb to all hands. Our ship is in a tractor beam and we are being hijacked to an unknown destination. Our hijackers are Orion, and we think they're hijacking us to play music somewhere." The captain shook his head at the madness of it. "At any rate, we must remain calm. We have not offered any resistance, but we will if our lives are endangered. We are standing down from red to yellow alert. All hands remain at your posts. Webb out." He looked at Geordi. "You have a friendship with this Orion, right?" "I wouldn't call it a friendship, but we did talk a few times." "And you're to stay on the bridge until further notice," said Webb. He looked around at his young crew. "There's nothing we can do now but wait." For 10 hours they waited, with no further word from their captors. A relief bridge crew came on duty, and everyone was relieved, except for Geordi, Will Riker, and Captain Webb. The portly captain paced nervously across the narrow bridge of the Gallant. Finally, the helmsman reported, "We're coming out of warp drive. Our location is the Zerapol solar system in neutral space." Captain Webb scratched his chin. "Zerapol? What is the closest Federation planet?" "Tellar,"
8 light years away. That's not close enough to offer much help, said Webb. Communications, can you send a message to Starfleet? Negative, sir, answered the woman on communications. The Orion dampening fields are still jamming us. Helm, said the captain. Stand by, in case we get a chance to break out of the tractor beam. Yes, sir. Sir, shouted Cadet Riker. Incoming transporter beam. Before anyone could react, 6 armed Orions materialized on the bridge. One of them was Jock 2. The weapons officer drew his phaser and Geordi tensed, expecting a battle. Hold your fire, ordered Captain Webb. Stand down! A wise decision, said Jock 2 pleasantly. He nodded to his green-skinned officers, and they lowered their weapons a few centimeters. What is the meaning of this? Demanded Captain Webb. You can't hijack a Starfleet vessel. You may not be members of the Federation, but you have treaties with us. This is a serious breach of those treaties. You will be free to leave in a few hours, said Jock 2. He looked at Geordi and smiled. I told you we would meet again. I'm glad to see you. Geordi rose to his feet. I'm not glad to see you, not like this. The Orion shrugged. I couldn't get your wonderful band to play for me any other way, and I desperately need you. Before you decide that I'm an evil person, may I have a moment to explain? Captain Webb glanced at Geordi. Outnumbered, outgunned, and far away from Federation space, they didn't seem to have much choice. Proceed, said Webb through clenched teeth. The Orion motioned to the overhead view screen. Can you find the 4th planet in this solar system? Webb nodded to Will on the auxiliary console. A few seconds later, a dark green planet with large land masses appeared on the screen. You could see flashes of light on the planet's surface, and dense clouds of black smoke hung in the air. The Orion pointed to the dark planet. This planet, Elephim, is disputed territory. We have 30,000 troops fighting a terrible war on the planet's surface. They have been fighting for 3 years without relief, without leave. He looked at Geordi. These soldiers are no older than most of you, and they are away from home for the first time in their lives. The war is brutal, and their morale is low. They need some entertainment, some inspiration. They need to see the Starfleet Academy band. What? Jack 2 held his hands out to Captain Webb. I beg you, sir, please come down and give one performance. It would mean so much to these young soldiers. The enemy is going through a period of resupply, and the hostilities have lessened for a brief time. That is why it was so urgent that I bring you here now. For 1 hour, begged the Orion, let them forget there is a war. Let them forget that death is in the air. Let them hear music instead. Is that too much to ask? Captain Webb's expression softened a little. Don't the Orions have any bands that could play at the battlefront? Jack 2 shook his head. Orions are not known for their musical ability. We have dancing girls, but that would not be appropriate. Your band is perfect. They are entertaining and inspirational, especially that ragtime number. If I refuse? Asked Webb. Jack 2 licked his purple lips and stroked his green brow. Please don't, Captain Webb. I asked you nicely once and you refused. So you forced me to bring you here. If you refuse again, I don't know what you will force me to do. Captain Webb frowned, obviously not happy with his choices. Can you guarantee our safety? The Orion nodded. Yes. Not only will you be surrounded by 30,000 troops, but we will be in orbit to beam you up. I promise you'll be free to leave right after your concert. This will be the largest, most grateful audience you have ever faced. I'm begging you, Captain. Captain Webb looked at Geordi, and the young cadet wondered what he would decide. Certainly it was a noble aim to entertain troops at the front. In the long history of the Starfleet Academy band, they had done so many times. The captain sighed. I haven't got much choice, but I want you to come with us, and I suggest you
go through proper channels next time. The Orion grinned. You won't regret this, Captain, once you see their faces. He lifted his communicator and spoke into the device. Beam back everyone but me, then set course for Elephim. Tell them that we will have our glorious concert after all. Half an hour later, the band members stood waiting in line outside the transporter room of the Gallant. They were wearing their dress uniforms and holding their instruments. Geordie gripped the Coridan phase modulator in his hands, and Will Riker had his trombone. Stinson and Acosta edged up to them. You're on the bridge, said Stinson. What's going on? Will pointed at Geordie. LaForge has got an Orion friend who wants us to play a concert for him. Geordie scowled. He's not my friend, but I can tell you why we were brought here. There are 30,000 Orion troops on Elephim, and we're supposed to play and cheer them up. So they can fight and die cheerfully, added Will. Acosta scowled. If this is another practical joke, I'm going to break you in half. It's no joke, said Will. When they wound their way into the transporter room, they found Captain Webb and Jock 2 checking off the young musicians. Thank you, said Jock 2 to each cadet. Orion will never forget you. Yes, said Will, but will you help me take my propulsion exam? I'm missing my class right now. I will send my thanks to your superiors, promised the Orion. Geordie and Will took their places on the transporter platform, and Will whispered, Do you know what to expect down there? A war zone, Geordie guessed. He wondered how bad it would be. Energize, ordered Captain Webb. Geordie took a deep breath and hugged the phase modulator to his chest. Normally he didn't mind transporting, but this time fear gnawed his stomach.